how to manifest abundance, how to manifest your dreams. How can we make the things we want happen? Life. Today I want to share with you how I manifest. And of course it's about learning with certain level of openness, of belief, because I'm not here to give you universal advice that works every time, but rather to share an experience of a manifestation, an experience also about my relationship with money, what my relationship is with this famous concept as well. Law of attraction. What got me known on YouTube in 2012 was a video about the famous law of attraction. I had just read the book The Secret and I had filmed a video in New York is actually almost every 6 years, accidentally between 6 and 7 years old. I was always doing a video update on my thoughts on it. When I went back to New York, I did a video, actually this law of attraction that I might revisit after this one to share more of my perspective on it. But I also shared during a trip the manifestation experiences I had, and there I realized that it's been 6 years. Time flies so fast since that last video on the law of attraction. So, how have I evolved on this topic today? How do I continue to manifest? What are the limits? What are the things that I find to be a bit of bullshit? What are the things that, for me, are the things we can put in place that actually work? In any case, in the experience that you can also experience, that's going to be the topic of today's podcast. So, if you're interested, I wish you a good listen. So yes, in my life, I've already shared several anecdotes about manifestations, synchronicities, things that happen, like by chance. You meet the right person at the right time, you need money, and suddenly, the money comes. There comes a moment when you desire something, you don't have it, you go through other processes and everything, and then it happens. And there are times, it's pretty impressive. And I don't know, I want to believe in the magic of life, but I also believe in our part of responsibility. The goal isn't just to visualize in order to manifest and think, well, if I visualize and focus on it, it's going to happen. No, you have to take action, you have to put things in place, of course, but what really makes the difference is that I believe there are a lot of people today who think that certain things are impossible or out of reach, or they are a little bit, let's say, they've given up. They are a little bit discouraged about maybe some dreams. They say to themselves, I also want to have that, or I dream of being in such a place, or being able to achieve such a project. And so they immediately think to themselves, no, it's impossible. No, I'll never make it. I'm going to tell you something, and it's not to give a motivational speech and tell you that everything is possible, but in a superficial way. It's that for me, the majority of the things I've achieved in my life were, by nature really, from where I was, seemed impossible. And whether it's about giving talks, creating content, becoming someone that people pay for advice, for giving talks even, for training actually. I've been doing this for a while now. I started in 2008, but really full-time. In 2011, 2012, after my studies, I realized that I was actually someone who was extremely shy, extremely introverted. I'm still introverted, but speaking in public, giving advice to people, networking, reaching millions of people, it all seemed impossible. Even the fact that I, who was more of a scientific type, write books, I also had moments where I thought, this isn't for me, because from where I came from, it might not have been the right time, the right place. There was this speech, sometimes a little bit of, you don't deserve it. In the end, things get done. So, I really want to share with you my mindset, how I operate regarding that. Take what there is to learn. If you don't know me, I'm Joel Yanting. It's been since 2012 that I launched my YouTube channel, and I share and document my journey as an entrepreneur. And so, it started with a very simple intention, which was that during my studies, I opened a little blog and I thought, hey, I'm going to share what I have to say. That's it, I'm from the generation that also experienced skyblogs, so that was a bit of nonsense. We shared stuff on it, and then, after that, there was a bit of a trend with blogs that came along, and everyone was documenting their projects, their journeys. And while I was a student, after an internship I did at a startup, I thought, wow, I want to explore entrepreneurship, I want to dive in. It was like a kind of trigger, and it just hit me. There have been a lot of things in my life that just happened to me without them being planned. Originally, I studied to become an engineer. So I started with everything related to computer science and all that. And in the middle of my studies, I changed direction to go into business and business school. And actually, it's pretty funny because sometimes we take a direction and then we realize that life shows us that's not the way and I want to change again. And even in my own business projects, I started out as a digital consultant. I was also doing web design services, everything related to online marketing at the time when it was starting to develop. And then I started focusing a lot more on time management advice because people were asking me for it. but Johan, how you're managing your missions, your studies, and how do you also create your business while doing all of that? I had a lot of people coming to me and discovering me through this blog to ask for advice. Things happen naturally like that. I didn't think too much about it. I started giving advice. I was called for training in schools, for companies, etc. And then, at one point, I thought to myself, it's true that I'm working a lot, and I was struggling to sell myself. And then I thought, okay, can't I duplicate all of this? Expertise can be sold online infinitely. You could package it into an online product and sell it infinitely. So that's what I did. You see, things happen naturally. So I didn't jump in until today. There's really this thing with online training, online trainers. Yes, I'm aware that it's become a bit of a mess. There's everything and nothing. There's some really good stuff. There's some really bad stuff. There's scams and there are good things. So I'm not judging that. But just to tell you and give you some context, I started on the first waves and I discovered it when it was very marginal and you weren't even sure you could make a living from it. Because I had 2 launch flops before I launched a product that really worked. And I invite you to check out the first episode of Game Entrepreneur Stories, where I talk about how I got started. Here, I'm just giving you some context to explain a concept that is very important. Sometimes when we want to manifest something, we think we absolutely need clarity and a vision of what we want. But there are also times when we don't really know what we want. We get moving and we just put in place what calls to us. And that's what I did. Lost? I ask, what do I want? Follow intuition. Urgent project? Pursue it. What's calling me? What's my intuition telling me? And I'm going to follow it. And even today, if there is a project, I feel that it must be done. If there is something, I feel that this is where we must go. I'm not going to hold back. I'm not going to say, yeah, but is it profitable and all that? If it's something really strong and I feel like that's what I need to do, I'm going to go for it. Things are going to happen, or it will open up opportunities for other things. And that mindset, it's true that it can be a bit limiting. The belief, the law of attraction, is that you absolutely have to perfectly visualize what you want. So yes, it's interesting to know that, but sometimes when you don't know it, that doesn't stop you from taking action and saying, if I don't know where I want to go, maybe I know what calls to me deep down inside. So it's a balance between what we might call the star that calls to you or where you see yourself further down the line, but also its little inner flame, its little inner compass that will guide us towards the star. Or when we don't know and it's all foggy, we can go deep within ourselves and say, this is what calls to me. I don't know where it's going to lead me, but I'm going to go for it. And it's this mindset that makes the difference when I tell you that a lot of things in life have come my way without me necessarily seeking them out. It's precisely to tell you that I would really like to say that I deserve credit for my hard work. Yes, I worked a lot. Yes, I made a lot of sacrifices, but there are also things that just happen like that. But exactly, it's a balance. It's a balance between what needs to be done. I'm putting in place what will really help me in terms of work to maybe go in a certain direction. I'm going to give my best, but there's a part that I can't control. But for things to come our way, we need to have an active radar in a way. We need to be open in some way. We need to want it. So that's important. When you don't feel like it, when you're resigned, when you no longer believe, you have your head down. It's really the image of, I lower my head, I don't look ahead anymore, there are things around me, I don't see them anymore. On the other hand, when you really want something, when you have that sacred fire, you lift your head, you're open, you're hungry, you're eager, and coincidentally, you'll start to see the opportunities. And coincidentally, we'll run into the right person. But it's all well and good to run into the right person, but you have to seize the opportunity. But it's all well and good to maybe have some money coming in, because it could be someone who will reach out to you for a project, someone you might run into who will invest in the project, someone who might also put you in touch with the right person for maybe a contract. And actually, when the money is going to come in, it's not just okay. It just fell into place. There was still something behind it, a proactive approach that created the opportunity. But above all, we seized it. Manifesting is about having the ability to be open in order to seize opportunities. I shared during a conference, and I posted the excerpt online, that there have been quite a few studies done on luck, and they realized that the luckiest people were indeed luckier. Convinced of being lucky, there was even a test conducted on people. We would give them a little test to see if they had luck or not. And actually, they realized that after taking the test, once they had seen the results, there were some people who, by chance, found a $100 bill in the room where they were supposed to wait for the next part, while others didn't find it. And it just so happened that those who found that famous $100 bill, the result was that some people, by chance, found a $100 bill in the room where they were supposed to wait for the next part, where others didn't find it. And actually, by chance, those who found that famous $100 bill, dollars, in the waiting room, in the waiting area, were those who had positive on the luck test. That means the test showed that they were naturally lucky. They believed in it so much that they were like, oh, but it's true. I'm lucky. And as a result, they were open and found that ticket. And there are plenty of studies like that on luck, which show that it's a mindset. It's important to differentiate pure randomness, pure chance, the things that just happen to you, which are in the realm of a small percentage, and all the things in life where we decide how we respond and in what state we are. So that's important to have that attitude. I believe and I think and I believe that plays a big role. I've always thought I had a guardian angel. I've always thought I was lucky. In 2022, in the hospital, I met the right doctors. On discharge day, the regional expert removed my drain. But actually, there are several things I was open to regarding luck. By chance, running into the right doctors at the right time, meeting the right people, and then by chance, the day I was supposed to be discharged and have the drain removed, I happened to have that day, the only day in the month, the recognized expert from the region who happened to be there and removed it for me. He was the best person, the most, let's say, competent to do it. Others could have done it, but that day I had the right person. So sometimes you think, well, yeah, there might be a little something, but maybe it wouldn't have been the case. But I try to stay open about it. And even in trivial anecdotes from everyday life, I remember that last year I had a breakdown with my car, and actually a nail got stuck in the tire, and I was in Dordogne at that moment. I was traveling. And it turns out that when you have a problem with the wheels of a Tesla, you can't just change them. You have to take them to an authorized garage to get things done. It just so happened that that day I ran into a tow truck driver who was lovely, who was great. Then, the taxi that took me from Dordogne to Bordeaux, a 2-hour drive in a taxi. So, we want to have a nice guy. He was really nice. We talked about entrepreneurship, mindset, and everything related to his business. I had a great time. And then, when I went back to pick up the car, I took the train, and he came to get me at the station. Actually, it was the same, but we also created that luck because, for example, the guy who came and who was really super cool, the tow truck driver, who also connected me with people to help me much faster, actually recommended me to someone, he said, because it was the insurance that took care of it. Maybe my friend, who is a taxi driver, is available at night and on the insurance list, just ask. So, you see, we create things, but I also think there's an attitude involved. Similarly, I often get upgraded, I get gifts, but I think it's not just about having a lucky star or anything like that. We can believe in it. But I think there's also an attitude of being good with people, being in a good energy, and respecting others. You know, even when I see someone, it could be someone from the insurance who's going to do a check or something like that, we immediately get defensive and put ourselves against the person. It puts you in a different mood, and if we respect the person, if we stay in a good energy, even when she's unpleasant and everything, we realize that people will naturally sync up with us and get into a good vibe too. It doesn't always work. There are people who are in their own thing, but in most cases, when you have good behaviors, you will be rewarded. But you shouldn't necessarily have an expectation because I think that very often we want to calculate too much. Like, yes, I'm going to control what happens to me. I'm going to control others and everything. No, it's just about being in a good energy, a good vibe, just planting the right things. And then, actually, it just happens by chance. But it works in business too. In business, how many times I try my best to be as fair as possible? But it just means that sometimes I will say no, but there are times when I'll be more flexible or I might give little gifts, things like that. And it always comes back. But I don't have an expectation that it will come back. I'm not interested. I let go. I'm generous. Do what you want with it. But generally, I've noticed that when we're respectful and generous, good things happen. As long as you don't do it in a calculated way. So, I believe it's a concept that he talks a lot about in the law of attraction, which is that you need to raise your energy. So, exactly, I know it can sometimes be guilt-inducing and that there are limits to it. Yeah, you always have to be in high energy. You attract the frequency that you're in. Good. It's a double-edged sword. You have energy but face toxic things. But you're also going to encounter a lot of toxic things that will try to break your vibe while you're in a good energy. Because sometimes we say light attracts shadow, whatever you want. So I'm not into those theories, into those things, completely closed on them. On the other hand, yes, it makes sense that when you have a certain vibe towards your environment, it puts people in a particular posture. If you're aggressive, if you're angry, if you're sulking, then naturally, the people around you will go into defensive mode. It's natural, it's logical, but it's also something I've talked about a lot. What we call the reticular activating system in the brain means that if we're obsessed with something, we'll start to see it everywhere. I shared one of the anecdotes, since the goal is also to illustrate with real stories, the fact that once I wrote during the summer, It was summer of 2021 that I wanted a Tesla for Christmas, but I had no intention of just writing it down like that. And actually what happened is that afterwards, I went to do the test drives early November, and I learned. I got the message about the date when I was going to be delivered, and they told me, if you want, you can have the car delivered on December 24th. Christmas Eve. So there's still something that tells you, but this can't be happening. I wrote that in my notebook. I had shown it, I had shared it, and I said, but this is crazy. And in fact, I believe that behind that there is perhaps, once again, I like to run the magic, but I am not attached. That is to say, if it's a nice surprise, that's cool. But there are things like that, in fact. But finally, to have it, it was also necessary to put some movement into it. It was also necessary to go and do the tests. It was necessary, well, yes, to learn it. It took all the groundwork to learn about it. Anyway, there are little things like that that show that sometimes when I was waiting and I had said to myself, hey, I'd really like to change my car and get a Tesla, I started seeing Teslas everywhere. I started seeing Teslas on the street and everything, and I was paying attention to them. It's like the syndrome of the famous red car. If you think about red cars, you're going to start seeing them everywhere. That's the reticular activating system. It's that thing where when you have an obsession, when you want something, you naturally start to see it more. For example, a woman who maybe wants a child will start to maybe see more pregnant women around her and more babies. A man who wants, I don't know, such as a type of clothing, maybe it goes for a type of shoe, and suddenly he's going to start seeing them everywhere. In fact, what happens is that our radar gets activated. When we want something, we have a radar that gets activated, and that's purely scientific. It's the focus. When you're obsessed with something, you'll start to see it. It's like confirmation bias. If we're convinced of something, suddenly the facts and things around us, we filter them so that they go the other way. Our brain is made that way. So, this aspect of when we want something, starting, to actually visualize it, to put it out there, to put images on it, like what we call vision boards, I think that's a big plus. But again, and I'm going to repeat it all the time, you need a phase of letting go. Because if you start saying, this is what I want, I visualize it, but I'm absolutely fixated on it, and I want it. You start to get frustrated with where you are, with not having it. That's not the right energy to have it. It's, here's what I want. I've materialized it, and I'm taking action, and things will happen. Until I have it, I let go. And it's often this notion, and it's funny enough, often when we start to let go, that the right opportunities come along. It was in 2020, we were in full lockdown and everything. I started wanting to move. I was fed up. And actually, it's impressive because back in the fall of 2020, when I had to look for an apartment in the area, especially on the east side, it was complicated. It was tense because there were a lot of people. The market, things were changing all the time. It was difficult at that time to find something good. So at one point, I started telling myself, okay, I want my new apartment. I want the hallway with the library. I had visualized it. I had even taken pictures to represent the apartment of my dreams that I wanted. And after several visits, I was starting to get discouraged. Really, I was getting discouraged. I was saying to myself, damn, but I never found it. I remember that I had gone to Lot-et-Garonne at that time, and I made a little wish saying, it would be nice if by Christmas I was in my new apartment and all. But honestly, deep down, I was starting to feel resigned. And then, finally, it was a moment when I completely let go. I said, okay, let's go. I'm going to the viewings, but no more waiting. And then, there was a love at first sight. There was a love at first sight, and I said, wow, actually, this apartment, yeah, it suits me. And everything. And so actually, finally, that's where I settled in, and that's where I set up the library you see behind me. And this library here, actually, well, maybe it's not really framed. But sometimes, in certain videos, you can see it, there's a fireplace, and actually, it looks exactly like the picture I had on my phone. So, there are times when, yeah, it's good to have a vision, but there's also this syndrome of, like, for example, the moment we let go the most, that's when it happens. It even works in business. Like, for example, the moment we let go the most, that's when it happens. It even works in business. How many times has the entrepreneur's lucky star shown up? That moment when you feel like things are a bit more tense. It's more difficult for many reasons. We have made more investments, or it is a slightly more difficult period, etc. And that moment, when we're trying to fight through it, I'm not saying we're forcing it, but we're trying, new contracts or developing new marketing campaigns. But it's slow, there's a lot of effort. And then at some point you start to say, okay, let's let go a bit, let's take a step back. And it's at that moment that a huge client will reach out to you where an opportunity is going to come up. Sometimes it works out, but it's tight. It's like maybe next week your company is off and then you have this thing that comes up. Maybe next week your company is off, and then you have this thing that comes up. And I tell myself, yeah, the concept I'm sharing here is the concept of letting go. So it's really hard. It's really hard because there are times when there's an expectation and when things get a bit intense, we want to let go, but the body tenses up. I almost want to say, yes, it's the expression, we clench our buttocks, but there are still situations in life where, yes, letting go is important to me. So letting go doesn't mean I give up and let the universe take over. It's about doing what I need to do. I give up and let the universe take over. It's I do what I have to do, but I let go of the outcome and I let go of all the aspects that I can't control. You still have to keep moving, but you need to have that perspective. I actually did a podcast on letting go, and I'll put the link in the description if this is a topic that interests you. For control freaks like me, who have a hard time letting go, it's a real issue. And if we go back to this concept of manifestation, you understand it. There's not only the balance between having a vision or something of what we want, but also having a more positive and open attitude for things to happen. There's not only the balance between having a vision or something of what we want, but also having the attitude more positive and more open for things to happen, and activating your radar while having, when you don't know, and it's a little bit the fog, this movement towards what calls us deep down inside. So listen to that little inner voice. And there's a higher level that I like to implement. What is the concept of the alter ego? It's a principle that we use a lot in visualization and mental preparation. I wrote a great article about it. Once again, all the references I'm talking about, I'll put them in the description because I don't want to repeat myself too much. And then there are things that I've addressed. But here, I actually wanted to harmonize them, to centralize them in this concept. Actually, I used to use that a lot in competition when I needed to build my confidence and reach the level at which I wanted to perform. I visualized my victory in the match, or whatever it was in sports, my performance. And I would prepare like that and step into the alter ego, the identity of myself as a performer. That means the killer, the competitor, because I wanted to get into that state. Same for the conference. When I have to prepare for a conference, I will put myself in the Johan speaker in this conference, confidence posture. And I'm going to prepare for that. In fact, the alter ego is about what state you need to be in for the level of performance you visualize or what you want. And that's super important because sometimes in life we do things, but we forget to be the person capable of receiving them. If you want more money, you need to become the person and the opportunity capable of receiving more. If you want people to respect you more, you need to have that posture of self-respect and confidence that would make you gain respect. If you want new opportunities, you need to embody the posture of the person who tracks those opportunities. And that's really an important point because there are times when I said at the very beginning that we can let ourselves go, lower our heads and all that. We can work on it. We can work on this alter ego, meaning this change of identity where we visualize where we want to be, who we want to be. We immerse ourselves in this, and as a result, we're going to change our posture to act, think, and do as if we were already there. And I did that a lot in business. When I started in entrepreneurship, there were times I hit glass ceilings, and what helped me break those glass ceilings? That's the question I get asked the most at the different levels. How do you break through them? In fact, what really makes the difference when you've been hitting a ceiling for too long, and if you're hitting a ceiling, is to say, okay, well, what is it? The next level where I want to be, and who I need to embody to move to that other level. Who do you need to be to hop? What is the future you? Who do you need to embody in terms of attitude, posture, confidence, etc.? And I believe that's what helped me a lot in terms of manifestation. Even in times when we sometimes feel a bit down, we lack self-confidence, we think to ourselves, but it's not for me. Am I going to be up to the task? There were times when I would give myself a little slap and put myself in those conditions where I would say, go ahead, go to that meeting, embodying it as if it were already done, as if you had already won, as if the contract was already yours, as if you had nailed it at the conference, as if you had won the match. Adopt that attitude because we all have these attitudes. When we win, when we feel good, when it's a good time, we feel that embodiment from their super self, I want to say, but there are times when things aren't going well, we lose it. And it's true that there are times, in fact, when we stay too much in it, we tend to put ourselves in a posture, as I said before, where we close ourselves off. But in reality, if we manage to reframe ourselves, it can be, for example, putting on some music at that moment, doing anchors that will put us back in the visualized, embodied conditions. It's like if I told you, Hop, you've won the lottery and you've won, I don't know, 100 million. It's going to hit your bank account. You've won the lottery, you've won 100 million. How do you feel? And now, are you going to feel rich? A lot of opportunities, maybe security, maybe finally being able to do all the things you've dreamed of, maybe a little bit of fear. It's a lot at once, but you're going to feel like someone who just won 100 million. However, the 100 million, if it turns out they are not yet in your account, but emotionally, in terms of posture, in terms of thinking, you feel as if it's already won. That's why I believe in it. Yes, because it's the thing I've done the most. It's, I believe, about putting things to illustrate where you want to be. You want to be on the cover of Forbes, go do a photo shoot and create a montage of yourself on the cover of Forbes, even though, well, now you have to pay for it, but it's above, but you got the idea. If you want to receive a certain amount of money, write yourself a check for that amount. If you want to see yourself in a certain place in the world with specific views of the sea or the mountains or whatever it may be, do it. But don't get attached to it. For me, the vision board, I think it's interesting because too many times in my life I've set up mini or big vision boards. I forgot, and I eventually realized that most of the things I had put on there a few years later came true. But there wasn't necessarily an expectation. There was a form of letting go, but in my mind it was there. And I think that when we have that in our minds, coincidentally, I think we're going to do a better job of seeing the opportunities that come our way. Because the more we know what we want, the more we know where we want to go and who we need to be. More opportunities we'll have to say, oh, look at that. It might be an opportunity that brought me here. So we'll be able to seize them more naturally. So that's why this attitude is super important and we can embody it. So of course, as I said, sometimes we're completely in the fog. And there it comes back. We're going to come back to when you really don't know, when you're truly lost, and listen to the little voice inside you. Too often we stifle it, and I believe that your little compass inside you knows what you want. So that's what I wanted to share with you. It was really more of a podcast format, I wanted to share that. There you go. I wanted to keep it pretty simple, without really having an attitude, just things that I have, without wanting to repeat what I have to say, even if there are similar points. But really, if this is a topic that interests you, I made the video on the law of attraction a few years ago. I'll also include in the description all the resources where I discuss this topic. And if you really want to go further today, especially about money, abundance, I have a program called Manifest. I called it that. You'll learn more about money, about to seize opportunities, know how to invest, etc. You have the information below if you're interested. And then check out the other resources to expand on the topic. But really, as I said, my stance today is not to tell you that this is really how it works. It's just a sharing of experience. It's up to you to take what needs to be done. It's up to you to have your own experiences to find what works for you. And I would be curious to know you specifically. Are there things that you've already managed to manifest? I have stories to tell. Honestly, I'm interested. And that's good. Maybe I could do a format where I share your stories. Or read them. Why not? That could be interesting. So if we have enough, how do you see things? So there you go. I wish you lots of success. Don't forget to subscribe, to follow if you're listening to a podcast. Leave the little stars. That makes me happy. If you're watching on YouTube, give me a thumbs up and share in the comments how you see things and if you have a story to tell. And then we'll see each other very, very soon. And I wish you lots of success and to manifest your greatest dreams very soon.